Why, hello again, children. So, a lesson for today: the difference between a 50-50 stance and a 70-30. I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, right? But I've trained at a few, well, two specifically. And then does online training count? I don't know. Two schools, one of extreme renown, another where the student was trained by a guy that was recognized by the school of extreme renown as a practitioner of extreme renown. I'm not going to name any names because, well, hey, Eddie Chong, that dude's legit. And this is where I'm going to get some shit, right? He taught me the 50-50 stance. Well, he teaches everybody the 50-50 stance. And I have a theory about the 50-50 versus the 70-30. And you'd have to travel down that, yellow brick road of forgotten history there. But the 50-50, which is very similar to a boxing stance, in Master Chong style, who, by the way, also teaches that the bong is a hook. Oh, right? And by the way, anybody that does this move and they're like, "What am I doing?" Right? That's if some jerk off has you in a body lock and you can't break the grip and you're trying to break his hands. You reach behind the back and then you're able to get your arms under his arms that are pressed against you. Right? Not saying it's going to save your life. I had a guy where, I would break the lock, I'd push it, and then he would just switch hands. Bastard. Learn how to wrestle. That's one thing I can say. And a lot of the chi sao helps a lot in jiu-jitsu. But let's get back to stances, right? So the 50-50 stance. My theory is for street fighting. If you're on the street, you need to have mobility. Boom, 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 boom. Especially if toys get involved. You know what I'm saying? You can't be standing there. Oh. Right? It's not going to happen. Now, what is in my opinion, the 70-30, and I still don't like the 70-30, right? But one thing I do understand, that inverted knees, how they train you, they teach you uno, dos, tres, right? I think you're supposed to be 50-50 inverted. Now, I still don't like the 70-30, right? 50-50 inverted, because if you're on a boat, what's that? On a boat? Yeah, who heard of, you remember the river school, what was it, the Red Opera House or something like that? I forgot, right? Do them some justice and look them up. Now, if you're floating down the river and you got bandits climbing on board of your ship and they're trying to rob you and slit your throat in the middle of the night, and the water's potentially got the boat rocking, on top of the fact that you got some heavies climbing up side of your boat, so your boat's rocking. You're trying to defend yourself. By the way, that's why the Wang Chun pole is so damn long. It's an oar for a boat, right? So anyway, and that's where this inverted stance comes in. Because if the boat's rocking, if you're standing upright and the boat's rocking, right? No. But if you're inverted, literally, that's what this is. And then give yourself a stand. If the boat's rocking back and forth and you're inverted, you're kind of able to deal with that rock, right? And then something else I want to say, somebody was really emphasizing dragging your foot, right? And don't get me wrong. I mean, I barely even know my Lim Tao form. But this right here, okay, look, back in the day when you were lucky to afford a pair of them fancy cotton bottom shoes, you were not sliding your foot across the ground. Wasn't happening. Now, if it was happening, it could be because maybe there was snow on the ground or it was a wet deck, like on a boat, and you don't really want to lift your feet up because you're trying to maintain your footing. I could understand sliding your foot, but the way people drag their feet, you got to understand, you weren't practicing on some fancy, nice, rubber mats, some tatamis or something like that, You weren't wearing your Nikes or your combat boots. Sometimes you were lucky to have shoes. And if you had shoes, they were cotton bottom shoes. And, it's not like you could just go down to the cobbler, right? You had to take care of your stuff. And so dragging your feet, just keep in mind, some people, they overemphasize. And then that 70-30, I mean, look, there's a lot of guys where they'll out chi sao me all day, right? but I will whoop them with one hand in real life, right? And they don't even want to talk about wrestling. That doesn't exist. Go to the ground. Ask, no disrespect, but ask a practitioner. Well, what happens if I get you to the ground? And if you're lucky, you'll get, well, just don't let that happen. They don't know what to do. It's. But I will say this much: if you got somebody in guard, whoop, and they're right here, you push them out, pull them out for pow, 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 pow. I mean, it does have some benefits. But again, you got to be able to know what to do when you hit the ground. Most people are like, oh, 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 oh. They don't even know how to stand up without, running out of breath. So God bless.